I'm a 40-year sports card collector, former sports journalist, broadcaster, and teenage sports card dealer. Now I make YouTube videos covering sports cards and talking sports.
Welcome to EDI Sports Show. Is the hobby dying? I've been in the sports card hobby for 40 years. I started way back in the 80s, and so I saw the boom during the junk wax era, and then I saw the hobby go down into a dormant period where nobody cared about sports cards from about 1993 to 2004. And then I saw the resurgence again and the crazy boom during the pandemic era where things just got crazy. So the question is the hobby really dying or not? So what I want to do is show you some evidence that the hobby may actually be dying. One, where did the great curator go? Two, Sports Card Investor doesn't get 500,000 views on his YouTube channel anymore. And three, YouTubers are quitting left and right. So is the hobby dying or not? Now, in my opinion, I don't think that the hobby is dying, even though we can clearly see that the hobby is no longer in that pandemic hobby gold rush, which we saw for about 2.5 years where everyone wanted to buy sports cards. But what you have to understand is that the reason that gold rush began was because influencers like Gary Vee were pumping and hyping up cards for multiple years. In fact, Gary Vee started to talk about sports cards in 2018. And so what he did is he reached tens of millions of people who had never heard of sports cards before, who now were like, oh, maybe I should take a look at this. And then the pandemic happened and everyone was stuck home with an extra $1,000 in their bank account thanks to Uncle Sam. So what did people do with all this extra money? And clearly what they did is bought sports cards. And so everything in the sports card hobby went up and up and up. So what you may be seeing as the hobby is dying, to me, who's been in this hobby for 40 years, it's more like we're starting to get back to normal. So are sports cards dying or not? And the real answer, I believe, is that no, the hobby is not dying. But we're no longer in this crazy era where people are going to overpay for cards. And that's a good thing, in my opinion. In the last episode, I talked about where the market was and that modern cards are actually going to see a 50% drop in value. So what I want to do is I want to show you kind of like what that means. So let's take a look at the 1986 Fleer Michael Jordan rookie card. Now, back in 2021, that card sold for $750,000. That's actually kind of the height of the sports card frenzy. And that's what I would call it, the sports card frenzy. Now, that card today is worth more around $150,000. So went from $750,000 all the way down to $150,000. Now, I don't know if you know your math, but that's a 500% decrease. That's correct. The card, the 1986 Fleer Michael Jordan rookie card, has come down 500%. So if you think that that's a crash, then it's a crash. Now, what I want you to understand, if you're following this channel, if you've hit subscribe and you've watched all the other videos, is to really look at that the frenzy, the sports card frenzy, is what drove prices up, not value. So Michael Jordan's card being worth $150,000 today is actually an increase over what that card used to be worth. It was not worth $100,000 several years ago. So what I want you to understand is if that's the case, if the card is worth more today than it was 5 or 6 years ago, then the hobby's actually in a in a growth period, not in a decline, even though we're seeing frenzy prices come down. And that's what you need to be aware of. And so I would say, in my opinion, I would be very cautious buying cards today, because are you paying what the card is actually worth, or are you paying still premiums on the frenzy price? So modern cards, I do believe still to this day, so this week we're putting this out, I think that modern cards still have 50% to the downside. So that's the trend. So be very cautious when you're buying cards. Now, if you're selling cards, this is what my suggestion is. I would really look at what the card is going for right now. Now, if you bought the card for more than what it's worth right now, you need to kind of detach your brain from what you paid for it. Now, I know that's going to be tough, because you're going to be like, but I paid $450 for the card and it's only worth $400 today. And that actually happened to me at a local show that I went to. I was looking at a card that was worth around $400, a PSA 9, was worth around $400. But the problem is that the dealer actually paid $450 for that card a couple years ago. But what does that have to do with me? I would like to buy that card. So I'm going to offer off of that $400 value, not the $450 value. And the problem is that the dealer just couldn't separate his brain from, well, I paid $450 and now it's only worth $400. And this is what happens to a lot of dealers. They get caught up in what their purchase price was. I was a sports car dealer for many years when I was a teenager. You have to separate your brain from what you paid to what you can sell it for. And this is the learning lesson if you are in business. If you end up at a table and you're setting up for a table and you end up where basically you have paid more for the cards at your table than what you can sell it for, you need to learn how not to overpay for cards, because that's basically what you've been doing to yourself. Don't blame the people coming to the show that they won't pay you what you paid for your cards. You need to go, the next time I buy a card, I can't pay the premium. I need to pay less so that I can get the value out of those cards. So if you don't want to sell your cards at wholesale, again, if you're selling to a dealer, you are the wholesale buyer. So if you don't want to take a wholesale price, then you need to set up as a dealer to sell to a collector. And that's just the way it goes. That's how the hobby works. So hopefully that all makes sense. This is behind the scenes. In the last show, I talked about the gold standard of sports cards in the hobby. And so what I thought I might do is, with the behind the scenes section of this show, is kind of go into all the freebies that I've given out with this channel into the community. Now, if you want any of the freebies, all you have to do is go to the link in the description. It will take you directly to the Facebook group. It's called Card Hoarder Nation. You can go there and you can download all of the freebies. No problems. They're all there. Now, I've been asked, why don't I put the freebies on YouTube rather than doing them on Facebook? And so here's the answer. YouTube doesn't give me the ability to upload it and forget about it. So basically, if I want to put freebies on a YouTube channel, I have to list out every single link on YouTube. And to be quite honest with you, that's a lot of work. And it's just easier for me to create a Facebook group and then just upload whatever freebie once and forget about it. And that's what I want to do. I want to just create the stuff, put it up there, and you can download it at your own convenience. So if you want any of the freebies, then just go to the Facebook group. The link is in the description, and you can download any of them whenever you want. You also can know that if you ever want to get new freebies, just go to the Facebook group and they'll always be there. Now, the new thing that I want to do is I want to research the top 100 gold standards for the hobby. Now, this is going to be all sports. So I'm not going to just do baseball or just do football. I'm going to do all the sports. I'm going to be the top 100 players that you should be aware of, that these are the gold standards. And the reason that I call them the gold standards is because these are the players, these are the bellwether players that determine whether or not the hobby is going up or going down. And this is also why I feel, in my opinion, again, my opinion, that the hobby is not dying, because based on these 100 players, the hobby seems to be stabilizing. Now, again, in certain cases, certain players, you're going to see downward pressure on those cards because they're still in pandemic frenzy mode. Now let's go to the viewer comments. So here's the text.
So I would say when I first started doing shows, it was really not an easy process. It was a matter of deciding what do I bring, and none of this stuff is priced and how they're gonna go. So now that I've been doing shows for a few years, it's much easier to keep up with. So you're constantly out there looking for stuff that is new on your table. So you have new inventory. Ideally you sell at the same show, and you're able to see the same people that come through, and you're striking up conversations is so important to see like who they collect. They either if they have a favorite team, they have a favorite player, favorite sport, and so you're kind of always looking around. That's what bring me to the show today, is to look around and find some cards that I could bring. So when I see these guys again, or or the ladies that are in the hobby, trying to make sure that I have that variety.
I want to become a sports card dealer. What should I do? If you want to become a sports card dealer, here's what I recommend you do. Now, before you ever buy a table or set up as a dealer, this is what I think you should do. You should go to card shows. Just start going. Because when you attend, then you're going to start to see some things. So this is what I want you to do. I don't want you to just go and wander around and don't take notes. So go to the show and first look at how big the show is. How many dealers are there? Are there 10 dealers at this show, or are there 50 dealers at this show? So write that down. That makes a big difference. How big is the show that you're going to, and how big is the show you're going to be selling at? That makes a difference. Now, the thing that you should be aware of is as you walk around the show, I want you to start looking at the variety of cards and start to look at, does everybody have the same stuff? And are there any dealers that do any specialty items? Now, here's what I mean. I went to a local show, and I've been going to local shows for the last 3 years. One dealer at these shows specializes in upper deck hockey. Now, I'm in the desert. I'm in Arizona. That's very unusual here in Arizona. There's not many dealers that deal specifically in upper deck hockey, which means that this one dealer has created a niche or a reputation. And that's what you need to start thinking about. What's your reputation in the hobby? What do you want to be known for? Now, again, like I said, I've been going to shows for the last 3 years here in my local area, and I've also set up as a dealer twice. Now, I talked to a lot of dealers. I built a whole list of contacts in the hobby, which is why I've been able to sell some of my cards. Again, if you've watched my playlist, the Sports Card Journey, that talks about how I had over 8 million cards and how I've been selling that hoard off over the last 5 to 6 years. Now, I've come down a lot. I don't have that many cards left, which is amazing, but it's a lot of work. And part of the reason that I'm able to sell off cards is because I've developed a reputation, especially in the local area. So people know that I know my sports because I'm a former sports journalist, I'm a former sports broadcaster, and I also have been in the hobby for a long time. So I know my sports, I know the players, and so I also know where the values might be. Now, I don't know what they're going to be valued. Like, I can't tell you how much a Connor Bedard rookie is going to be worth. I have no idea. I can't tell you what a LeBron James rookie should go for in the future, but I can tell you kind of what I think it's worth right now. And again, from all the research that I've done, I think LeBron James rookie cards are overvalued by a lot, like a lot. If you pay whatever you pay for a LeBron James, I honestly think you're going to have to wait 30 years to ever get that value back. Now, could LeBron James turn out to be the next Mickey Mantle? In my honest opinion, I don't think so. He doesn't have the cultural love that Mickey Mantle did. Now, again, baby boomers are dying off, so they're retired, and now they're also dying off. So will Mickey Mantle always remain that, hobby like gold standard, which again I've talked about? Will he always remain that? And the question is, I don't know. We're going to have to see over the next 20 years what actually happens, because Babe Ruth, who used to be like the biggest name in all of sports, no longer has that cultural relevance. People don't all know who Babe Ruth is. They know Muhammad Ali probably more than they know Babe Ruth. And not everyone has heard of Mickey Mantle, which is surprising for somebody who grew up with Mickey Mantle being like the number one name in sports. But again, as generations come up and they never saw Mickey Mantle play. Two, unless they talk to their grandparents, they don't even know who Mickey Mantle was because their parents aren't sports fans either. So if kids are not watching sports, then the sports cards are not going to be worth as much either. So where we're going, I'm not sure, but that's what you need to do. If you want to set up as a dealer, you need to know, what should I bring to the show? What do people want to buy? And the only way you're going to know what people want to buy is by going to shows and talking to dealers and talking to people that go to the show and say, what do you like to buy? Who do you like to collect? And you just want to get that information, write down those names, and then when you go to a show, you can talk to dealers and say, hey, how much would you want for these 5 cards of these players? Because you already know the players that people want. Once you do that, once you know the names of the players that people want, that's when you can start to build a dealer collection that you can then sell at a show. Be very, very careful. If you set up as a dealer at a show, remember that you have to sell at current prices. So don't try to predict where the market is going. You have to sell at current prices. So if a card is selling for $20, if you pay $20, you're losing money. That means, remember, you have to pay for the table, you have to pay to get there, you have to pay for your time. All of that goes into the costs of being a dealer. If you don't pay yourself, remember, if you're sitting at a card show for 4 or 5 hours, so let's say you make $20 an hour, that's $80 to $100 for the day. That's what you should make at a table, plus any profit off the cards. So that's how you know if you're doing well or not. How much do you make per hour at the show? So if you do a show for 5 hours, your minimum needs to, first you need to break even on the cost of the table and all the transportation costs to get there, plus $20 per hour or $25 per hour for sitting at the show, because now you've paid for your time. Then you have, did you make profit on any cards? And that wraps up the viewer comments section. If you have a question or a comment yourself, please feel free to contribute to the community, and don't forget to vote on the community poll. Thank you for joining me this week. If you have a story that you would like me to cover, please reach out to me on X or IG at EDI Sportscards. And until next week, I'll see you soon.